Welcome back. We're going to go over FRQ number 3 in our Unit 8 review packet. This is from 12.1 and 12.2 in your textbook. And here's your linked bit.ly AP Stat C12 Rev if you want to follow along with the handout. Let's go. The question, a simple random sample of 100 high school seniors was selected from a large school district. The gender of each student was recorded and each student was asked the following questions. Have you ever had a part-time job? 2, if you answered yes to the previous question, what was your part-time job in the summer only? And here's the breakdown. It's going by male and female, and it gives you the 3 categories. Never had a part-time job, had a part-time job during summer only, and had a part-time job, but not only during summer. We got 3 parts. Part A, construct a graphical display that represents the association between gender and job experience for the students in the sample. The suggestion is going to be talking about a side-by-side bar chart or a mosaic plot. B, write a few sentences summarizing what the display in Part A reveals about the association between gender and job experience for the students in the sample. And C, which test of significance should be used to test if there is an association between gender and job experience for the population of high school seniors in the district. State the null and alternative hypotheses, but do not perform the test. Let's start with letter A. Construct a graphical display that represents the association between gender and job experience for the students in the sample. See if you can use you want to break it down by percentages when you're doing this. So when you're looking at your male to female ratio, you think about we have 3 job categories. Never had a full part-time job, had a part-time job during summer only, had a part-time job, but not only during summer. So when you're doing a breakdown, think about it as percents. Since our samples were different, we have to use percentages to make those comparisons to get relative frequencies. So my suggestion on this, I'm actually not going to do a side-by-side bar chart. I'm going to do a segmented bar graph. Take a look at what I have here. I used my percentages. I did it just as a proportion. I didn't deal with percents, but I just labeled this axis here 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. They conveniently give you 10 spaces, so it just makes it easy to go to 100%. And I said proportion of gender by job experience. You could have said percent, but then you'd have to say 10, 20, 30. I just did a little color coding. I did the shaded in for the male and the blank for the female. And I did a segmented bar graph. So if you notice here, the male's about 40%. It roughly goes to the 40%, meaning the other 60% or so is going to give you the female part for the never had a part-time job. Similarly, I'll have the same breakdown, 53.6%, 46.4% here for the male and the female, and 60 and 40 for male and the female for the had a part-time job, but not only during the summer. And you want to make sure that you label, these are important, never had a part-time job in the summer only, part-time job not only during the summer. Make sure you label your y-axis. An overall title would be nice, and a key is helpful too. That way somebody can know kind of what things mean. So you want to have all 3, like all those components, labels, key, bar graph. Real quickly, this was from a free response question from the AP Stats website. So I'm going to show you their graph so you can compare. This comes from 2009 scoring guidelines. Let's open those up. This is actually question 1. This is what they use. They use a side-by-side bar graph. It doesn't really matter. As long as you have some sort of comparison between those two, that's the important part in labels. So if you prefer that, just because it's a little bit cleaner, go for it. We can write that down here as well. Either one would be acceptable. Okay, let's look at part B. Part B is simply asking you to talk about that graph that you made. So it says, write a few sentences summarizing what the display in part A reveals about the association between gender and job experience for the students in the sample. The important thing here is that you want to talk about the relative frequencies, the percentages, when you compare them. You don't want to just say, hey, there are more females than males. That doesn't cut it. You have to talk about the proportion of females, because you can see here there's different numbers all around. So we can't just say there are more than this without talking about how they proportionally compare. So say something to represent that. So if you want to pause it, try it on your own, then you can check this answer here. This one can get kind of wordy. I stated the females in the sample were more likely to never had a part-time job than males, and that's true. There's about 60% here versus 40%. I went on to say they were less likely than males to have had a part-time job in the summer only or not during the summer, and that's true because the male percentage is a little bit higher for these two categories. And then there does appear to be an association between these variables since the proportions change throughout each job experience. In other words, if there was no association, then we would expect them to be cut off roughly around the same spot. But you can see that trend gets a little bit different throughout each job experience. So I do suspect there to be an association. How strong of one is depends on running the chi-squared test. We're not going to actually address that situation here. Let's look at part C. All right, question C, it says, which test of significance should be used to test if there is an association between gender and job experience for the population of high school seniors in the district? State the null and alternative hypotheses, but do not perform the test. You don't actually have to go through and check that number. So think about how many samples you have. In this case, it's 100 high school seniors. And how many variables do you have? In this case, it's 2. We're talking about gender and job experience. So that's going to lead us to believe this is going to be some sort of chi-square test. The name of that test is the chi-square test of association or independence. Now come up with your null and alternative hypotheses. The nice thing is it's in the name. So if it's the chi-square test of association, the null is there is no association, or in other words, they're independent of each other. The alternative is there is an association between gender and job experience. So you want to make sure you write your hypotheses, and that's good enough for us. Thanks for listening to this question. The next video will be going over the multiple choice portion of the chi-squared.